Welcome, preppers. Today we're diving into the chaotic and unpredictable whirlwind that could unfold during the first 90 days of President Donald Trump's second term. By analyzing his previous time in office and assessing the current political climate, we'll explore how his policies might affect the nation and why Washington and Oregon could be flashpoints for major disruptions. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the latest tips, strategies, and in-depth analyses to keep you prepared for anything. Your survival is our priority, and staying informed is the first step. What preppers should expect: increased tensions in urban areas. Cities like Portland and Seattle could see a surge in political activity, with groups on both sides mobilizing in response to the Proud Boys' resurgence. Escalation of violence. The group's history suggests that these gatherings can quickly escalate into physical altercations, endangering bystanders and causing disruptions. Law enforcement challenges. Managing these confrontations will strain local police forces, potentially leaving neighborhoods and smaller communities underserved. Prepping strategies. Stay aware of planned rallies or protests and avoid areas where violence might erupt. Keep an emergency bag ready in case you need to leave your home or area quickly. Consider investing in home security measures to protect your property during periods of unrest. Washington and Oregon. Potential regional impacts. Washington and Oregon have long been epicenters of political activism and unrest. The polarizing nature of a second Trump term could exacerbate existing tensions in these states, leading to an increase in demonstrations, counter-protests, and clashes between opposing groups. The region's progressive population, combined with its history of large-scale protests, makes it particularly vulnerable to instability during this time. What preppers should expect: disruptions to daily life. Protests and road blockages could interfere with transportation, supply chains, and access to essential services. Localized violence. Clashes between opposing groups could spill into residential areas, creating safety concerns for families. Economic impacts. Prolonged instability may lead to business closures, job losses, and increased pressure on local economies. Prepping strategies. Build a 3-month stockpile of food, water, and other essentials to ensure self-sufficiency during prolonged unrest. Map out alternate travel routes to work, school, or other important locations to avoid protest zones. Collaborate with neighbors to develop a neighborhood safety plan, including mutual aid and communication strategies. Pardoning January 6th. Participants, what it means for America. One of the first actions of President Trump's second term was a sweeping pardon for individuals involved in the January 6th Capitol attack. This decision sent shockwaves across the political spectrum. Those pardoned included not only participants, but also key organizers who had been convicted of serious offenses. The move has been described as both a rallying cry for Trump supporters and a divisive action for the rest of the nation. This pardon has implications that ripple far beyond the justice system. For Trump's base, it's a symbolic act of loyalty, reinforcing their belief that they were on the right side of history. For others, however, it represents a dangerous precedent that undermines accountability for actions that many viewed as a direct assault on democracy. What preppers should expect: civil unrest. The pardons have the potential to reignite protests on both sides of the political spectrum. Progressive areas like Seattle and Portland, which have seen clashes in the past, are likely to become hotspots for demonstrations. Strained law enforcement. Police and emergency services may face difficulties managing unrest, leaving communities vulnerable. This could result in delays or disruptions in essential services. Polarization and division. The divide between political ideologies is likely to deepen, increasing the potential for localized conflicts or demonstrations to spiral out of control. Prepping strategies. Ensure your family is prepared for potential disruptions to public services by stockpiling essential supplies like food, water, and medicine. Familiarize yourself with local evacuation routes and alternative transportation methods to avoid areas of unrest. Strengthen ties with your community to stay informed and share resources during chaotic times. The Proud Boys, a resurgence of activity. The Proud Boys, a far-right group that gained notoriety during Trump's first term, have seen renewed momentum following the pardons. Known for their confrontational tactics and violent clashes with opposing groups, they have wasted no time staging public demonstrations to celebrate what they see as a victory. In regions like Washington and Oregon, the Proud Boys have a history of organizing rallies that attract counter-protests, often leading to violent clashes. Their presence has reignited concerns about the stability of these regions, as well as the safety of residents caught in the middle of potential confrontations. Unpredictability and preparedness. The first 90 days of President Trump's second term promise to be a period of significant uncertainty. Whether it's the fallout from the January 6th pardons, the resurgence of groups like the Proud Boys, or the challenges facing progressive states like Washington and Oregon, the potential for instability is high. The best defense is a solid preparedness plan that prioritizes adaptability and community support. Looking back to move forward. Lessons from Trump's first term. When Donald Trump first assumed the presidency in 2017, his administration set the stage for some of the most dramatic and polarizing political moves in modern history. From sweeping executive orders to bold policy shifts, Trump's leadership sparked widespread reactions, both positive and negative. States like Washington and Oregon, known for their progressive policies and activism, often found themselves at odds with the federal government. The tension wasn't just political. It manifested in protests, legal battles, and in some cases, outright clashes between citizens and authorities. In his second term, it's likely these tensions will not only resurface but intensify. The difference this time? The stakes are even higher. America is more divided than it was in 2017, with increasing economic uncertainty, social polarization, and environmental concerns. Washington and Oregon have doubled down on their progressive policies, setting the stage for even greater friction with a Trump-led federal government. What does this mean for preppers? During his first term, policies were rolled out rapidly, sometimes catching state governments and citizens off guard. From immigration crackdowns to environmental rollbacks, the Pacific Northwest often bore the brunt of these changes. Protests erupted across Seattle and Portland, sometimes devolving into riots that disrupted daily life and strained local resources. For preppers, the unpredictability of these events serves as a stark reminder of the need to remain vigilant. The lessons of the past 4 years should not be ignored. The next 90 days could bring an even greater level of uncertainty, fueled by unresolved tensions and a president who thrives on defying expectations. Prepare for the unexpected, because if history is any indicator, the only certainty is change. Immigration crackdowns, federal versus sanctuary states' immigration policies defined much of Trump's first term, with measures such as the controversial travel ban and increased deportations. Washington and Oregon, as sanctuary states, resisted these policies, vowing to protect undocumented immigrants within their borders. Legal battles ensued and protests erupted, often turning into prolonged standoffs between federal agents and local governments. In his second term, Trump is likely to double down on immigration enforcement. With a renewed focus on limiting sanctuary states' authority, expect executive orders aimed at withholding federal funding, expanding immigration and customs enforcement, ICE operations, and implementing stricter visa regulations. These actions could have immediate and far-reaching impacts on communities in Washington and Oregon, especially those with large immigrant populations. Unpredictable outcomes. One of the biggest challenges here is the unpredictability of federal actions and local responses. What happens if federal agents conduct mass raids in urban centers like Seattle or Portland? Will state and local governments intervene? Such scenarios could spark mass protests, disrupt local services, and strain community resources. For preppers, the key takeaway is to anticipate disruptions in urban areas and plan accordingly. Avoid hotspots of potential unrest. Secure your home and stock up on essentials in case services are temporarily halted. Immigration crackdowns could also lead to social fractures, pitting pro-immigrant activists against those supporting stricter policies. These divisions could escalate into localized conflicts, making it even more important to monitor the situation closely. As always, preparation is your best defense. Environmental rollbacks, resource conflicts in the Pacific. Northwest Trump's approach to environmental policy has always been controversial. During his first term, his administration rolled back numerous regulations designed to protect public lands, waterways, and wildlife. The Pacific Northwest, known for its pristine natural resources and strong environmental advocacy, found itself at the center of these policy battles. In his second term, Trump may take an even more aggressive stance. Policies could include opening federally protected lands to logging, mining, and drilling, which would directly affect industries in Washington and Oregon. For rural communities that depend on these resources, these changes could bring short-term economic benefits but also long-term ecological risks. Unpredictable outcomes. While some may welcome the economic opportunities, others are likely to resist. Environmental groups in the Pacific Northwest have historically been vocal and well-organized, and they are unlikely to stand by as federal policies threaten local ecosystems. Protests, blockades, and even eco-sabotage are possibilities. For preppers, this means potential disruptions to transportation routes, especially in rural areas where logging and drilling operations may intensify. Additionally, resource conflicts could strain relationships between urban and rural communities. Urban areas like Seattle and Portland might prioritize conservation, while rural areas could advocate for economic growth. These divisions could lead to political and social instability, making it even more important to strengthen community ties and stay adaptable. Civil unrest. Navigating urban chaos. The Trump presidency has often served as a lightning rod for civil unrest, and his return to office is unlikely to be an exception. During his first term, cities like Portland became epicenters of protests, with activists and counter-protesters clashing in the streets. Some of these confrontations escalated into violent riots, prompting curfews and heightened police presence. In his second term, these tensions could escalate further. With heightened polarization, both supporters and opponents of Trump may feel emboldened to take to the streets. Cities like Seattle and Portland, already known for their activist communities, could become battlegrounds for ideological conflicts. Unpredictable outcomes. Civil unrest often has a cascading effect. Protests can disrupt supply chains, delay emergency response services, and create unsafe conditions in urban areas. For preppers, the key is to avoid these hotspots. Identify alternate routes for travel. Have a plan to shelter in place, and maintain a stockpile of essentials in case access to stores or services is limited. The potential for unrest also underscores the importance of situational awareness. Keep an eye on local news and social media for updates on protests or road closures. Avoid getting caught in large crowds and always have an escape plan ready. Stay ready for the unexpected. The first 90 days of Trump's second term are shaping up to be unpredictable and potentially volatile. From immigration crackdowns and environmental rollbacks to civil unrest and resource conflicts, the challenges ahead demand vigilance and preparation. Subscribe now to stay informed with the latest strategies, tips, and updates. Together, we'll navigate the chaos and ensure you're prepared for whatever comes next. Remember, stay safe, stay vigilant, and as always, stay prepared.